Hi there, I'm Alicia Butler-Pierre, and in this season of the Business Infrastructure Podcast, we did something very different. We actually are touring 12 different countries to figure out what's it like to do business in each of those countries. Up on our last stop, the last country of our 12-country tour is none other than the Philippines. But before we get into that, make sure you click that subscribe button below and click the notification bell. That way you'll know exactly when the next episode will drop. Now let's go ahead and figure out what is it like to really do business in the Philippines with people in the Philippines. We've left Saudi Arabia headed to the last country on our 12-country tour this season. And I guess you can say in many respects, we've saved the best for last. Not that the other countries weren't amazing, but this one is particularly special because it's where a good bit of this show's back office operations takes place. A place I've heard my dad and uncle each fondly reminisce about as they tell stories of being stationed here in the 70s while in the U.S. military. I'm talking about the Philippines. This episode is underwritten by Equilibria Incorporated, the company behind this podcast where we design scale-ready business infrastructure for fast-growing small businesses. I'm Alicia Butler-Pierre, and this is Season 18 of the Business Infrastructure Podcast, the show where we share operational tips, tactics, and tools for curing back-office blues. You're about to hear a live recording of an interview with two key team members here at Equilibria. Luckily, the weather has held up, and we're outside near the pool. You might hear some dogs barking in the distance, but rest assured, this interview is packed with practical information about how we seamlessly work together as a team across 3 different countries. This is episode 233, Doing Business in the Philippines with Erika Revilla and Jodie Maquiran. Mabuhay, everyone. I learned that means welcome, I think. Maybe, sort of, in the Philippines. But at any rate, welcome to the Business Infrastructure Podcast. We are recording live. We're outside of the beautiful Marco Polo Plaza Hotel in Cebu City, Cebu, in the Philippines. I'm your host, Alicia Butler-Pierre, and joining me is Erika Revilla and Jodie Maquiran, and they are begrudgingly joining me. They are so used to being behind the scenes. These wonderful ladies are an integral part of the team here at Equilibria. And for those of you who are new listeners to this podcast, Equilibria is the company that actually underwrites this show. And you are going to hear the voices behind a lot of the work that goes on with this podcast. So without any further ado, before we get more into what Erika and Jodie actually do, not only at Equilibria, but for the podcast specifically, and what it's like to do business in the Philippines, let's first meet these wonderful ladies.
Hi. So I was born and raised by my grandparents in Bohol. It's a province here in the Philippines known for coral reefs and unusual geological formations, and notably the Chocolate Hills. I moved here in Cebu a year after I gave birth to my eldest child to look for a job to support her needs and to live independently.
All right. And we're going to get into how we actually met. But before we do, let's first meet Miss Jodie.
I'm Jodie Maquiran, and I originally was from Bacolod City, also known as the City of Smile. I grew up in Bacolod City, and then currently we're living in the south of north of Negros Occidental, and that's in Cabancalan City.
Okay, and we know we have some barking dogs here in the background, so we are sitting outside, so just bear with us. We are recording this live. But Jodie, I know your background is actually in social work. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you came into that line of work and what ultimately led you to Equilibria?
I'm actually a registered social worker, I haven't practiced social work for that long since I took up the board exam 7 years after I graduated in 2010. So when I took it up on 2017, I was working in a BPO industry or a call center. So I was there for 7 years. And then right after I passed the board exam, I decided to leave the BPO industry and started working as a social worker. I was with an NGO for 6 months, a residential NGO. And then I transferred to another NGO, which was under the umbrella of a direct selling company. I was with the direct selling company, but after around 8 months of being there, they requested me to be part of their sales team because they said that they can see my potential being in sales. So I've been with that direct selling company under the sales team till I knew you.
That's right. Before we get into sharing with everyone how the three of us actually met, I do want to know if one of you wouldn't mind explaining the Philippine Islands. There are several islands. And what's so interesting is this is something that I've learned from both of you. Maps can be incredibly deceptive.
Here in the Philippines, we have three main islands, or the country can be divided into three main areas. Luzon, the largest northmost island, which includes Manila, where you first landed here in the Philippines, Alicia. A group of islands called the Visayas. It's where Cebu is located, and also Jodie is located as well. And Mindanao, the second largest island here in the Philippines. So,
and how many islands are there exactly?
Philippines, we have 7,641 islands.
Whoa!
So you won't find many more naturally diverse countries than the Philippines.
Wow. Now let's get into how we actually met. Again, when it comes to the podcast, let me just say or share really quickly with those who are listening what you all are doing behind the scenes. So Jodie is the mastermind of all of the beautiful graphics that you see, whether it's on YouTube, the actual podcast itself, podcast pages that we have on the website, promotional materials, and she's also the person who is responsible for getting the transcripts up there on the website as well. And Erika, again, strictly from a podcasting perspective, is in charge of the show notes. And she's also keeping a master list of all of the resources that each guest has shared on this podcast. And that is a massive list, let me tell you. But Erika, Jodie, I was wondering if we could also talk a little bit more about how we actually met, because I am asked this question all the time. First of all, a lot of people didn't even realize that we weren't all in the same country until they saw pictures of the three of us together actually here in the Philippines. So I thought that was so funny. But it also speaks to the power of the different digital technologies that we're using. And we're definitely going to share some of those technologies with the audience. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. You can catch the full interview by going to businessinfrastructure.tv or by clicking the link below in the description box. Don't forget to subscribe so that you'll know exactly when the next episode drops. See you in the next video.
Join us next week for another episode of Business Infrastructure with Alicia Butler-Pierre.